Before we have to talk some news, because the news cycle in the weird and wacky world that is the one that F's never ceases. It's gone crazy today. I can't believe how many bits and bobs that we need to address. Threads at which we need to pull. Of course, we've got to talk about Oscar Piastri's interview, courtesy of AMUS. So too, we've got to talk about the power struggles at the Bulls that are red. Helmut Marko now apparently has the upper hand in deciding who will take that seat alongside Maximilian Verstappen, and it is techie. Got to talk about rookie sprint. So too, we've got to talk about Formula One's commercial deals. Andrea Stella's chimed in on swearing, colourful language, talking about role models and the need for F1 drivers to lend themselves to that definition, become champions, therefore taking aim, of course, at one Maximilian Verstappen. So too, we've got to talk about testing next year, and so too, we've got to talk about rookie races. Colapinto first and foremost, in advanced talks with Sauber, soon to become Audi now. It all of a sudden feels like it's young person season. Back in the day, let's say 24 months ago, nobody wanted to take a risk on a newbie, on a rookie, because there were too many good, experienced drivers around. Now, however, it's 180 massively. Andrea Kimi Antonelli, Jack Doohan, Liam Lawson. There's a gazillion on the grid next year. Colapinto to Bartoletto potentially. There are loads of young, hungry drivers, but it's not lost on me the fact that Felipe Drugovich and Teo Pourchaire, the most recent F2 champions, are left on the sideline. How does that even make sense? It doesn't, of course. Why? Because it's F1, and F1 is indeed techie. Colapinto, though, in advanced talks to join Audi, but they will have one eye on other drivers, will they not? Bartoletto, imagine that chap in a couple of weeks' time goes and win himself F2. Well, that will put him in rarefied air. One of the only drivers to win F2 and F3 back to back in his maiden season each. That will put him in the same category as Oscar Piastri, Charles Leclerc and George Russell. Oh, the humanity. Everybody will want to get themselves some of that chap in Bortoletto. However, Colapinto hasn't been half bad either, has he? Let's be honest. Nobody expected him to come. He was always going to be better than Logan Sargent even, but that much better that quickly. Nobody anticipated that, and that's why there are very many teams circling around Colapinto. James Vowles had this to say, that potentially as far as his development, that they weren't too soon. Indeed, he had to do testing, and he impressed at Silverstone testing earlier this season. But since then, he's done one of these as far as expediting for his not insubstantial learning curve, and that has to matter. James Vowles, however, isn't looking to let Colapinto go, not in perpetuity. This is a loan deal that they're muting, and even if it doesn't come off, James Vowles in a recent interview says that he has himself a backup plan. Speaking of driver hierarchies, should we touch on Helmut Marko, because there's an article come out that talks about the power dynamics between himself and Christian Horner. You'll remember that as far as the appointment of one Nick de Vries, that Helmut Marko and Christian Horner disagreed vehemently. That Helmut Marko was against one Nick de Vries' appointment, wasn't he? Christian Horner fancied it, and then look how that one turned out, because of course Helmut Marko was right on that occasion. Oh, he's messed it up, look at that. Oh my gosh, got it the wrong way around, Cameron. Marko was supportive of Nick de Vries' appointment, lest we forget. Get your thinking cap on, Cameron. And Christian Horner didn't fancy Nick de Vries. Helmut Marko, therefore, on the back of being wrong, getting his IWS handed to him, had to take some steps back, didn't he? Lost power, therefore. However, since the whole shenanigans around Danny Rick, he's been proved right, and again he has the upper hand. Does one Dr. Helmut Marko, consultant of one Red Bull GmbH. On the back of his position being weakened, now it is strengthened. This article says that he had a grudge, Helmut Marko did, against Danny Rick. Why? Because once upon a time he left Red Bull in their hour of need. Danny Rick's performance was underwhelming, and helmet markers started to look at pastures and new drivers in Yuki Tsunoda and Liam Lawson to potentially replace him. But Christian Horner wanted them to stick with one Danny Rick. And what does that mean for now? Well, it means that helmet marker, as far as the decision making, has the whip hand. Indeed, that chap is now holding the red pen as far as the decision as to who will replace Checo Perez going forward. According to this fella, Bach, his name is, Tsunoda is right back in contention to partner Maximilian Verstappen as soon as 2025. He could be involved in an effective short-term shootout with Liam Lawson. And we love this, Benzie News. What are you saying, living on the edge? I love this. A shootout between Yuki Tsunoda and Liam Lawson. And again, the winner takes all, right, for all the marbles, for a seat alongside Maximilian Verstappen. That's what I'm here for. If Tsunoda, for the avoidance of doubt, therefore outperforms one Liam Lawson over the next 6 races, then he will have the upper hand. Indeed, he will have made himself a case to replace one Checo Perez, particularly if his underperformance continues in the same vein. So too with Liam Lawson, however. Liam Lawson nails it and leaves Yuki Tsunoda in his racing dust. Therefore, the seat will be his. Helmut Marko now with more power. He holds the whip hand and he may have the power of veto as far as who will get that seat alongside Maximilian Verstappen for 2025. Oh, the humanity. Helmut expects immediate performance from rookies. I mean, it's not bad, but they may need a bit of a chat. And this is the problem with Liam Lawson. Already I can hear in Christian Horner's tone that there is an element of doubt. He's not 100% sure on Liam Lawson, whether that dude can make it, whether he has what it takes indeed to sit alongside Maximilian Verstappen as soon as 2025. But I digress. It is a a merry-go-round as far as the rules and regs, and F1 are tinkering for 2024 end of and 2025. Why? Because they dreamt up this brilliant idea for the rookie sprint race, and that has gone gonzo. No longer, sacked it off. It was due to happen at the end of this year, and it was meant to be rookies, and it was meant to be at Abu Dhabi. Now, however, it will no longer happen. Why? Well, because it's logistics. It's because of overwork. And again, they haven't cancelled it completely. They were saying they're going to postpone it between now and potentially 2026. More rules and reg changes. Because as far as testing, you'll remember last year or this year even testing that Fernando Alonso, man from Oviedo, Asturias, had a lot to say, didn't he? Said something along these lines that we're the only sport in the world that spends so little time with the equipment using which they have to race 24 races. In tennis, you get to spend all the time practicing that you need. And why are we any different in F1? You could argue that we need more time and not less as far as testing, said Fernando Alonso, with all of the variables, the symbiosis that is tyre, aero map, chassis and suspension. Can absolutely make that argument that they need more time, not less, than a tennis or a football. Everybody needs to practice. So here's what changes they've made. No longer will it be 3 days or 3 days across 2 test sessions. As of 2026, when we expect brand new rules and regs to be instituted, you know, the old active aero stuff. Again, complete U-turn, brand new power units, half electrical, half combustion engine. Now, as of 2026, no longer will it be 2 days times 3 days across 2 different sessions. It will be 3 days across 3 different sessions. If I'm a betting man, I'm betting that Fernando Alonso had a massive part to play in that, not least because of his comments this year. Andrea Stella on swearing. Madeline, Audi should take Bortoletto, Colapinto at VCAB. I don't think they have the app. So with Bortoletto, remember he's a McLaren junior driver, and McLaren will be acutely aware. We'll get onto Oscar Piastri's interview shortly, but they'll be acutely aware of the fragility of their current driver pairing. As brilliant as Lando and Oscar Piastri are, there will be friction there. Both of those will be getting deals and contracts thrown in their face. How long can Oscar Jack and Lando carry on for as a going concern as a driver pairing? Ergo, Why would McLaren let go Bartoletto, the man who's about to potentially win F2 on his maiden voyage? With that in mind, McLaren will potentially loan him out or not even keep him in-house, lest he get a taste of an Audi and of an F1 drive with a view to stay there. No, I don't think so, Madeline. They're looking to keep Bartoletto on their books on McLaren, or at least I would be if I had a hand in the decision making. Oh, and by the way, Andrea Stella has chimed in on swearing colourful language gates, saying as follows: I think we should differentiate between circumstances as far as swearing. If you're in the car and it's heat at the moment and you're going at 200 gazillion miles an hour, then that's one thing. But if you're outside the car at an FIA driver's press conference, as an example, then that's a different thing. In the car, they're under pressure. This is competition, under pressure of delivering laps at 10 tenths. But outside of the car, this is a different thing. Stella goes on to say, quote, when you are obviously outside the car, I think we should all make an attempt to be responsible and not forget that we are, as far as is possible, role models. You hear that word bandied around a lot, right? Lewis Hamilton saying that we all need to act as champions. Define what it is to be a role model or a champion. Non-rhetorical question. Stella continues, the popularity, the celebrity, it doesn't only come with benefits, it comes with downfalls, travails, responsibilities, and we need to take any possible opportunity to pass on a good message, healthy messages, because Formula One is so popular that you can influence a wide range of people. Let's go, Captain Davis. Thank you so much for becoming a member, chap. This is techie. Really, really techie from Andrea Stella, because it reads well at face value. But yeah, and still, surely, I keep watching all these documentaries that talk about the Vince McMahon one on Netflix. As controversial as he is, he nailed the sport's gift and its curse. Of course, it was its ability to make you feel something, evoke. And you do that by opening up the doors to your characters. And surely F1 can learn a lesson from that. You don't do that. You don't open up your doors and nail relatability if indeed you are telling your drivers how to speak, whether it's cookie cutter personalities. No, that's not what we want. That's not what F1 has ever been. Even all throughout its history, dating back to 1950, individuality needs to be put up on the podium, top step settings, does it not? If indeed this is Formula One, diversity and inclusion, we race as one, in the words of the FIA. But it is techie. Of course, Andrea Stella is leveraging brinksmanship at the altar of Maximilian Verstappen, very firmly taking aim, and it would make sense. Why? Because there's a driver championship at stake. 52 points is the delta between Messrs Maximilian Verstappen and Lando Norris. Oh, the humanity. It gets techie. Oh, and by the way, F1, if you didn't understand why there was this need to be role models and steer clear as far as is possible away from the expletives and colourful language, here is your case in point. Because F1 makes a huge change to the podium celebrations after the CEO Stefano Domenicali strikes a massive £750 million deal with Louis Vuitton Moet. What is going on? Sponsorship is important. F1 does need to be clean, and the personalities, of course, need to be cleaner. Why? Because these brands are prepared to throw hundreds and hundreds of millions of pounds in sponsorship at the sport and at the drivers. This matters. Cash rules everything around me. Cream, get the money, dollar bills. Your reports say that there will be a new addition to the Formula One podium celebrations as at 2025. Since the 2021 season, the likes of Verstappen, Hamilton, Norris have had to settle for spraying wine products after their Grand Prix triumphs. That's because F1 has been associated with the Italian-speaking winemaker Ferrari Trentino. Now, the Daily Mail claims the Daily Mail. All F1 publications are created equally, they say, but some more equal than others. Daily Mail not being a god tier one, but we'll go with it for argument's sake. The Daily Mail claims that Domenicali has struck an eye-watering $750 million deal with Louis LMHV, whatever that means, After long-term discussions, F1 has now confirmed the agreement and said it will last over 10 years. It's reported that discussions over the deal lasted over a year, with Dominicali assisted by the Liberty Media chief executive Greg Maffei. I can see Mohammed Ben Sulayem being very happy with that. How are they going to celebrate in Abu Dhabi? They can't use it there. This is one of those ones where the sponsorship only pertains to certain territories, because they don't drink in those territories, do they? Abu Dhabi, Saudi Arabia. How do you balance or even prioritize conflicting demands? Oh, the humanity. Too techie. LMVH says Alarizi. Michael says, but it may be a top seat. That could be rookies that when they get sucked in. Depends how McLaren are in 20. It absolutely does depend how McLaren are in 2026. These are the variables to which we're trying to speak. The many F1 automotive pugilism threads at which we need to put in your main event. Let's talk about some Oscar Piastri, because this is chaos as far as this chat. Look, as far as my opinion, my POV on Oscar Jack Piastri, I thought Lando was going to hand this dude's AWS to him. Rate Lando Norris, super quick, racecraft for days, wink and a smile, looks like a champion. Makes sense, right? Makes sense that he would be the guy to carry McLaren back to the mountaintop to win championships for them, both drivers and constructors. However, I feel like we saw something different from Oscar Jack Piastri twice this year. First time at Monza when he put the moves on one Lando Norris, ran the second chicane. Again, nobody saw that coming, not least Lando Norris. Levels, again, reminiscent of some of the greater ones, which we'll come to in a second. And then secondly, at Baku, this makes no sense what Oscar Jack Piastri is doing. Okay, so maybe they had the mini DRS, which would have helped him defend Charles Leclerc, but he still needs to execute for that. No mistakes. Pulling again a manoeuvre that was reminiscent of the one that he pulled on Lando Norris at Monza chicane, the second chicane. Like levels, people don't see this dude coming. If we're talking Danny Rick, that was what epitomised him back in the day. Last of the late breakers, the ability to pull surprise moves on these other peddlers. And again, Oscar Jack Piastri is everything like his compatriot Danny Rick was back in his heyday. In this interview with Automotor und Sport, they ask him, many people compare you to one Alain Prost. How do you see that, Oscar? Do you recognise the similarities? To which Oscar Jack responds, yeah, it's a comparison that honours me, especially because Alain Prost was one of the most successful drivers in the sport's history. No kidding, Sherlock. Alain Prost, le professeur, man who tinkered around in testing and put soft compound tyres on one side and mediums on the other. The dude who expanded his visor because he saw that in more peripheral vision there was lap time. Dude who beat Ayrton Senna in 1989. Like, what are we doing here? 3-time champions. Like, behave yourself. Or 4-time even. How dare I? Put some respect on Alain Prost's name. Do you know what I mean? This dude was absolutely god tier. 85, 86, 89, 92, 4-time winner. Put some respect on Alain Prost's name. For a sophomore, a man in Oscar Jack Piastri in his second season to be comparing to Alain Prost, mate. Chaos. But I digress. It's a comparison that honours me, especially because Alain Prost was one of the most successful drivers in our sport. No kidding, Sherlock. Piastri continues, of course, I wasn't even alive, and courtesy of our mate on Twitter, Junaid, go and follow that chap. Of course, I wasn't even alive when Senna passed away, so I don't have the full picture of the battles between Prost and Senna. But from what I hear about him, I actually see some similarities between the two of us. Oh, the humanity. 5 times was it? Bloody Nora genius. This is chaos. I can't even count. My very noddy maths fails me in real time. Check this out then. Prost and Senna in 89, 88 to and 90. Is this what we're talking about? Is this what we're about to be blessed, courtesy of the racing gods, by virtue of the rivalry between Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri? I certainly hope so. I for one, certainly hope so. Oscar Jack continues. Prost has a very smooth and rounded driving style. He's very precise in his work. I can also recognise that in myself. I really like the cut of this dude's jib. I like the way that he's talking, the way that he's understanding the parallels between him and his driving style and the equivalent of Alain Prost as a person and the way that he used to pedal. Do you know what I mean? Bodes well for Oscar Piastri. If I were a betting man over the next couple of years, per Bernie Ecclestone and Eddie Jordan, I think this dude might be in contention to win himself some silverware. When I'm talking silverware, I'm talking about driver championships, not single races anymore. This, ladies and gents, is chaos. He continues. Prost had very few accidents. You're a legend, genius. Lando looks like he's on the limit. Oscar just at one. Listen, I'm telling you, we'll get to that because he talks about it, genius, and you're a legend, by the way. Thank you so much for the continued support. Look, he gets asked the question as follows. Prost had very few accidents in his career, and that applies to you as well at the moment, as at the time of writing. Very few from Oscar Piastri, if any at all. Some minor mistakes, but no DNFs, not yeeting it into the barrier like our old mate, modern day Jean Alesi. Alain Prost, the interviewer says, justified it by saying that he always drove at 99.9%. How is that with you? Oscar responds, well, not quite, mate. In our time, you always have to push the limits. That surely has to do with the cars as well. At the time when Prost was racing, the cars were less reliable, not as safe. Going beyond the limit had much greater consequences back then than it does today. Our cars are built a bit more sturdily, much more reliable than back in the days of Alain Prost, le professeur. Piastri continues, still you shouldn't plough through every round over the curbs every single corner. Today, it's about hitting the limit precisely. If you stay a tenth below, you're too slow. If you go over it, the tyres will punish you. It's a very fine line. Who, ladies and gents, is this chap talking like this in his sophomore season? Joanna, I don't understand. Who is this chap? He's on a completely different level. The cut of his jib, his stoicism, his ability to execute in real time, notwithstanding the not insubstantial even, pressure that so characterises the F1 circumstance. This dude just goes out and gets it. I keep hearing the stories about him. His mom talks about him on the Red Flags podcast, that he always had this stoicism, was a great chess player back in the day. This level of racing cerebral is unprecedented, especially for one so young. Now I say that to say this, Oscar Piastri's been good this season, and again, if had the racing gods been shining on him, he'd be well in contention for a cheeky drivers' championship, or at least much more than he is as at now. However, the point about Oscar Piastri isn't necessarily how good he's been in his sophomore season as at the time of writing. It's what will he be in a couple of years' time? If we continue to extrapolate for his learning curve, if we expedite even for it over the next 2 or 3 or 4 years, what will he be like then? It's his second season, for Pete's sake, his sophomore. He will only improve. He will only continue to get better. All of his strengths will become sharpened with experience. Indeed, his ability to win championships, both drivers and constructors for McLaren going forward, will be a function of that. Oh, and by the way, lest we forget, they keep talking about team orders, and each time I hear Oscar Piastri talk about team orders, he says something to this effect: it needs to make sense for me. I'm not just going to do it for doing its sake. It needs to make sense for me, Oscar Jack says. And again, in saying that, he sounds more like Ayrton Senna than he does Alain Prost, I will be honest with you. He said that it will give way to Lando Norris, but Lando doesn't hold a blank check. This isn't his. He cannot leverage this over me, is what Oscar Jack's saying. And indeed, therein lies the essence of the man, the Aussie, Oscar Piastri, who is epitomised by nothing if not resilience. Were I a betting man, I would go down to the bookies right now and place a lot of money on Oscar Jack Piastri, like Bernie Ecclestone and like Eddie Jordan, that he will become a champion within the next 2 to 3 seasons. How do you like your Formula One?